does Tantra and Vedanta stand in the midst of all this? So let's go further and look at Tantra. Now, Tantra deals basically with a very important thing called Kundalini. Kundalini means that which is coiled. Kundalini is a spiritual energy that is dormant in everybody. It is there in every human being. But we are operating on 1% of our full potential, less than 1%. When we feel prana, we feel the whiff. It is the steam that comes off the boiling pot of water. That is what is animating us today. What animates somebody who is awakened their Kundalini is much more. But you don't see it outside. You don't see those people doing Olympic champion because they have turned it inward to do something different with their apparatus. Right? So, Tantra is definitely an esoteric study, and it has many branches. In the West, sometimes people have thought, even in India, that tantric sex, right, seems to be the common misconception. There is a branch of Tantra called Kaula Tantra, which is the lower form, we call. It's a ritual form, and there is a legitimate way to use it. But I don't know anything about it to guide you. But there are two other schools, Mishra Tantra, Samaya Tantra. Samaya Tantra is the highest, that is the Sri Vidya Tantra. It works with a higher psychoenergetic center. So you see this word chakras. Chakra means a psychoenergetic center. Now, you can say that the lower parts, the lower chakras in the body, tend to lead us towards ignorance and to dissipate our consciousness. The higher chakras tend to unite the consciousness and lead us towards wisdom. So, Sri Vidya Samaya Tantra deals with the highest levels of the chakras, trying to make conscious, to guide consciousness to wisdom. Okay. Now, the moment you encounter pranayama and you want to then, you start exploring, you have to know something about Tantra. If you don't know the details of Kundalini and chakras, and if your teacher has not awakened Kundalini, doesn't know how to guide somebody, you can crash land on the wrong planet. And believe me, this can be very devastating to your physical system, to your mental system, everything. It can destroy people. I can give you websites of people who are suffering from Kundalini syndrome who are a mess. That is why, not to exclude anybody, the reason they kept this secret was not to, that we shouldn't have these people do. They wanted to judge that you qualify. Do you qualify? If you show through the yamas and niyamas that you have arranged your external and internal behaviors in a way that you can handle this, then you can do it. So there is, I hope you see the point of why it was esoteric. Now, okay, let us suppose a tantric is successful and then comes to the pinnacle of, Tantra. Tantra ends up in something called Shiva and Shakti. Shiva, in this context, means pure consciousness, the static principle. Shakti means the dynamic principle, which is energetic, associated with feminine, like yin and yang, people talk about. So that is Shiva Shakti. Again, it's a dualistic idea, but at the peak, the tantric realizes that Shiva and Shakti are the same. Okay? But not all tantrics realize that. There are Shakta tantrics and there are Shaivite tantrics, and they will not talk to each other in India. So in the context of this highly dualistic system came Shankaracharya. And he said, through great yogic accomplishments and Tantra accomplishments, he said, you've got it wrong. The Vedas say there is only one truth. Let me tell you what that is. And so Vedanta brings you back to the, I think I moved, there it is, no, that's fine, to the peak, the pinnacle. And the pinnacle says, I moved too far ahead, right? The pinnacle is that there is only one consciousness, that is attributeless. Nirguna Brahman. Brahman is that consciousness, the universal consciousness. Nirguna, guna means attribute, I told you. Prakriti has gunas. Nirguna, no attributes. So that is the source of everything. So that is why Advaita Vedanta is so unifying. So when he came and propounded this, and he defeated everybody in argument, logic, which was the way to do it in those days, Advaita Vedanta spread all over India because he traveled all over India and converted many people through the force of his argument, not through, the sword or through paying them money or any other way. It was just that they fell at his feet. People were different in those days. If you felt that somebody was speaking the truth, you would accept them as your guru. Right? So this is the context of yoga, Vedanta, and Tantra. They all work together. In the Himalayan tradition, you have to practice all three together. If you don't, you can be very seriously damaged, like I said. If you practice one of them to the exclusion of the other, the benefits increase as you go with every level. There is no doubt about that. There are many benefits to be gained, but you have to be very careful about the cautions and the dangers, the caveats. And a true teacher should warn you about that. If they tell you that it's all good, that's not a genuine teacher. I can tell you. If you go to a nuclear technology, somebody will tell you, class, they will say, use this, this is for good, but don't use this. Why do they protect all these secrets from Iran and Libya and Sudan? For a reason. They don't want it to harm the world. Similarly, there was a reason for it. It was not just to, deny people the access. Now, so we have this nice picture of Yoga, Vedanta, and Tantra. And at this point, I'd like to take a break and ask you if you have any questions on what we have seen so far. Yes, please.
What is the relationship between Shiva and Purusha and Shakti?
That's a good one. One could, they are of course different systems, but one could say that Shiva and Purusha are essentially the same thing. And Prakriti is, you might say that Shakti plays through Prakriti. Yeah. So there is a parallels. Understand? Prakriti, Shakti and Prakriti, one can say. I know that's a lot to digest, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to.
Well, I guess I agree with you. In the West, Hatha yoga is the only thing that most really are exposed to. And so that's kind of really too bad.
Yes.
I mean, it's that that's because of the orientation for the body, I think.
It could be that. I don't know what the exact reasons. Ultimately, some sort of information got lost in the transmission, and then many of the people who are teaching very sincerely. This is the sad part. They are teaching with the intention to help, and they've done a very good job by increasing the awareness. Let's not forget, everything in this world you can have positive and negative. They've done so much for people. Are very sincere about yoga in the US. They want to practice. There's an I can attitude, which I like. That's great. If you can couple it with the wisdom from more deep study, then you've got it. On the other hand, one can argue that in India people are very scared of yoga to some extent sometimes. They feel, oh, I don't want to do all that stuff. It's too dangerous or something like that. So you need a combination of wisdom and strength that I can do. And then it's useful. Okay. If we have no questions on that section, I'd like to go forward and talk a little bit about some basic concepts in Advaita. And if you look on that sheet, I forgot to mention to you, I have some sort of a glossary on the first page to help you with all the terms that I've used. And on the flip side, I give you, for those of you who like to practice, I've given you some very preliminary starting points. And one thing that I will say before moving out of yoga is that yoga was always meant to be practiced in seclusion. If you read the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it says, Ekante Matika Madhye. Eka, one. Ekanta, alone, in solitude. So this notion of going to a yoga class, I can't understand. If you don't practice on your own at home, no yoga teacher can carry you over to consciousness, You have to sit at home and practice. And then you will question your teacher more carefully, And you will find the student who practices sincerely and who cultivates discrimination, which I talked about, the teacher will come. This is a saying, and it's true. For the student who practices, the teacher will come. Don't put off the practice thinking, I have to wait for the best teacher to come. Start practicing. As you practice, you'll find your better and better teachers. Finally, you will realize the true teacher is within you. There is no teacher outside, in fact. The goal of any guru is to awaken the guru inside you. That's something to ponder. Okay? So, with that, let's move on to the section on, I want to talk a little bit about Advaita Vedanta now, since I said that's what the topic is about. And